Well, I hope you've realized, but this is a cool country. In diplomacy, you always have to be careful when you're talking to London about how much of a good time you can have somewhere, because they end up telling you to come back home. But hopefully you'll get a chance to stay, and hopefully you'll get a chance to see a lot of the country if you can get down, if you stay the weekend and go down to the beach. But I say that partly because you feel the energy of the country, and I think that's what we're hearing today about what's possible. And I was here not to enlighten you about tokenization, I don't think I'm the person for that, but to talk about what is evidently an opportunity to drive investment, not into only El Salvador, but the region. And that's my role ultimately as ambassador. I see myself in a commercial role, and that is why I'm here today, to be part of an event that can help drive investment, to be part of an event that can give El Salvador the tools to be flexible in an ever-changing world. I also want to take the opportunity to speak about two areas where I think government does have a role, and that's in rule of law and governance, and particularly two areas where I think collaboration between the United Kingdom and El Salvador can flourish in this area. El Salvador's role in pioneering digital assets has provided huge development potential. Regulatory evolution, institutional capacity building, and alignment with international best practices is unlocking faster and more sustainable pathways to investment and opportunity, not only for El Salvador, but the region. Digital assets and tokenized securities have the potential to play an important role in expanding access to capital and moving market efficiency, provided they are supported by, amongst several things, strong legal and regulatory framework and robust governance standards that build trust and investor confidence. And that's certainly where the role of governments come in. And I see two areas of particular collaboration between the UK and El Salvador. Firstly, in the exchanging of best practices on the development of capital markets and securities tokenization. On the one hand, the UK, through the Bank of England and the Financial Conduct Authority, is actively developing a supportive framework through initiatives like the Digital Securities Sandbox, with an ambition to become a digital capital markets hub. The FCA has also set out plans to support tokenization to drive innovation and growth in asset management and capital markets. And on the other hand, here in El Salvador, they're advancing their developmental of digital assets and have earned international recognition as a pioneer in this space. There are valuable lessons that both countries can learn from one another, and the British Embassy is keen to support and foster the exchange of these best practices between our two nations. I also want to talk about governance standards and supporting increased market access. A critical factor that allows innovation to scale responsibly and markets to integrate globally is robust governance standards. This principle has been central to the UK's development as a leading global financial centre, underpinned by rule of law, strong institutions and trusted regulatory frameworks. The British Embassy stands ready to support El Salvador in adopting these best practices by embedding the rule of law and internationally trusted dispute resolution mechanisms. Such foundations can unlock greater market access to investment opportunities not only in El Salvador but across the region. And I want to end by talking about the region. I think El Salvador in many ways is at the cutting edge of changes across this continent. We are, to put it mildly, living in uncertain, to put it diplomatically, uncertain times, unusual times. But it's a time of real opportunity. And I see in this country the ability and the willingness from leaders to take advantage of the opportunity. And what we're talking about today really gives the country an adaptability and flexibility, and nothing better can prepare us for an uncertain future than being agile, than being flexible. And in exactly these conversations with innovators that we've got in the round table and during the whole day, we're learning how best to prepare for this uncertain future. I believe that Latin America is yet to have its best days. For Europeans who are amongst us, it doesn't really feature when we think about the world, but I think that's about to change. And I think the next decade, if it's going to teach us anything, it's going to teach us that this part of the world can be a real engine for growth. And I hope that my country, and certainly which is what I'll be working towards, can be a part of that. Thank you very much.
Great. So when I brought you guys up, I kind of introduced you by your various countries, right? So we have Paraguay, Brazil, and El Salvador. And I think we can get a little bit of a taste of what's happening across the region today is my hope for this panel. So do you mind maybe quickly giving brief introductions as to what your companies do? What are you doing with tokenization and with Bitcoin?
Well, Okay, yeah. Well, thank you very much, Jesse, for inviting me again this year. It's been great. And my name is Fernando Arriola. I'm the CEO of BC Group. We're a digital assets innovations company. So we do pretty much anything since selling meat and importing beef and distributing in El Salvador to tokenizing structured products through, let's say, fiduciaries in Paraguay and Switzerland. So pretty much what we're seeing in Bitcoin in the market is that, Bitcoin is a long-term let's say, a store of value for long-term. In Latin America, well, in Paraguay specifically, it's not considered and it won't be considered, I think, currency for the time being. But we have a new legislation for the tokenization of assets and real-world assets, which I think it's very positive. And I think it's going to be a great few years in figuring out how to gain that capital and be able to gain more investments. That's pretty much it.
Thank you again to invite me to come here. It's nice. I started SmartPay 2022 during a conference here in El Salvador. And the reason that we started was to try to help Bitfinex to operate in Brazil. That was the mission, to help Bitfinex to operate in Brazil, not be in Brazil. So we are trying to tokenize it fiat deposit, let's put it this way. And then we did it last year. SmartPay was, we sold SmartPay to RezolveAi. Resolve is a company based in the United States, and the headquarters is in England, in London, but we are also based in 27 countries in the world. So the idea, what we did in Brazil was to provide a technology that users could convert reais straight to USDT, instant transaction, and vice versa. That gives the opportunity to any company, not just Bitfinex, but any other company to be able to operate with Brazilians, not being in Brazil. And of course, now with the new regulation, we're going to be full compliant with the regulator once in Brazil. But the way we are trying to do, also we allow users to operate companies such as Bitfinex. They will be able to operate there, and Bitfinex is not even in Brazil, but giving the opportunity to Brazilians to do that. When RezolveAi came on board, was to convert everything that we did just for Brazil, but now the mission is to make that global and the same level as we did. Using USDT is the main bridge to allow the users to operate in platforms such as Bitfinex. So just for you guys to have an idea of volumes for Brazil, that's a few numbers that we have in Brazil. 36 million people without a financial access. 36 million people living there, and they have no access to the financial services. And on the other side, for transaction, $600 million every day. That's how much Brazil needs today in USDT. And we're not even starting with the new regulation where users can actually use USDT to do imports, using USDT to do other stuff. That for sure is going to become $2 billion just like that per day. So that's what we're doing. We are converting fiat sheet money to real money, USDT.
Miguel, can you give a brief introduction? I think it's a good segue into your company.
Okay, thank you, Jesse, Ambassador. Well, for all of you, if you haven't heard it, welcome to El Salvador as well. Volcano country, Bitcoin country, stablecoin country, and digital asset country as well. I am the head of regulatory matters and advisor for Tether here in El Salvador. I am very proud to be a Salvadorian working for this global company. My experience has been also in the digital assets field. I was a former member of the National Commission of Digital Assets as well as the Superintendency in Financial System. So it's like a little bit of a mix over there about what we are doing here. Well, my company, Tether, basically is a game changer in Latin America about talking about money and the access of money. There has been recent surveys generally from the World Bank and as well as the central bank here in El Salvador, and that demonstrates that 46.9% of Salvadorians, grown-up Salvadorians, have a bank account. So that's very low. There has been some effort to make financial inclusion a reality. But that's going to take some time. But in digital assets and meaning stablecoin issuances, what we're talking about is that we bring a relief for people. What we're doing here is to facilitate payments for merchants peer-to-peer, and as well as remittances, which is basically one of the main incomes for GDP here in my country. But as well, in other countries in Latin America, what we are seeing is that USDT is mainly a solution for inflation in some of the economies. You know, I was once in Argentina in 2024, and I was very curious to see that when people receive their salaries, they automatically switch it to the USDT and some other stable coins, because they know about the hazard that they have because of the inflation. That is one of the aspects that we're looking in Latin America, but since we have a company that is fully transparent and it's based and regulated here in El Salvador, we have to see all the advantages that this industry brings to people.
Very good. I think, so the topic of the conversation is financial inclusion. And last year, in the fourth quarter of last year, we had a report on financial inclusion in LATAM, and we highlighted some of the opportunities and some of the challenges. So I'm curious, from your various perspectives in different jurisdictions, what do you see as the challenges towards financial inclusion in the countries that you operate in?
Well, I operate mostly right now 50% in Paraguay, and well, actually 50%, that's a little bit, 40% in Paraguay, 40% in El Salvador, and now it's going to be 20% in the United States. So what I see in the US, you have the best kind of market in terms of inclusion into the financial sector. You know, so you can on-ramp on USDT or on-ramp on well, now USDC or a stable coin, and you can off-ramp very, very quickly. And that makes the use case out of the transaction, or the transaction a lot more, let's say, clear and transparent. The issue with Latin America is you can on-ramp, and specifically in Paraguay and in Bolivia, where we also have an office, but it's mostly a representation office, you can easily on-ramp, but you have no idea the provenance of funds for those assets. So the hurdle right now initially is to get the financial sector involved in this business, to be able to convince the correspondent banks for this to be a feasible remittance tool, which is great for consumption, as well as a means of payment and clearing method for SMEs. Because right now, and I don't want to talk ill of the competition, but there's Visa and MasterCard that charge, in our countries, they charge 5 to 8% for transactions. You know, if they're using USDT, and if there's a streamlined way to do an off-ramp, and for these companies to be able to, you know, liquidate those USDTs at a lower price, which is this is the case in El Salvador, and this is why I'm here. I mean, the cost here is around 1.1 to 1.5% for liquidation, and it's a perfect competition for MasterCard. MasterCard charges 4.5%. So I mean, the thing about El Salvador, well, Paraguay in general, is there's no availability of off-ramp. El Salvador, it does, and it's happening. And it's very exciting because right now Tether is regulated, and it's a regulated entity that has a validation of provenance, and it's actually better than most currencies because you actually know where your value is. So that's very good for the impoverished and people that require for their money to actually maintain its value in the long term. So for me, I'm in consumption basically, and I do a lot of things, but my main business is consumer goods. And in terms of consumer goods, you have to make it easy for the consumer to be able to use it to transact, and also be able to understand and feel comfortable with the method of liquidation, and also to be good with the banking sector, because without repatriation of funds through, you know, a correspondent bank in the United States or through the UK or through, let's say, the European Union, you're missing a leg. So right now, I think that the banking sector in South America is catching up. Central America is doing great things. And obviously, our colleagues here from Brazil is booming. The thing is, there's no regulatory, the regulation's there, but the taxes are also there. So I think that for me, it's a very exciting time to be in El Salvador, and it's also a good time to develop new products for consumers.
So it's funny, it's like the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? So the pain point is still the banks. All right. Rocelo, what about in Brazil?
Yeah, but you know what, Jess, I mean,
You didn't wear your shirt today about the banks.
yeah. My first meeting, I had a case with the banks. My first meeting with the Brazilian Central Bank was because it was a huge fight, 2016. A huge fight between my company there and the banks. Like 5 banks, I was suing them. It was a huge fight. It wasn't doing something on the news or telling the banks they don't want the crypto market. Then one day I got a meeting with the Brazilian Central Bank to try to calm things down. I went in the meeting with a T-shirt written, "Fuck the banks."
How did that go over?
Yeah, they didn't took that well, huh? They kind of didn't like much. But, well, then I grow up, of course. Now today, I cannot see the stable coin be used without the banks. We do need them. Unfortunately, we do need the banks. We need them to get the stable coin. And then why I'm saying that is because the users, they trust in the banks. They do trust. So, but that's the majority. But why stablecoin is important to run inside a bank? Because in the moment that the bank has the opportunity to offer a stablecoin, especially in Latin America, as a global account, a dollar account, well, especially now with USAT, that could solve a lot of problems for the banks to start to offer that. That gives the opportunity for the user that now he can get $100, but he wants to invest in some token that is listed in a platform that is being offered in Australia. Now he has the opportunity to do. When he was only using reais or pesos, they cannot do that. So now the tokenization of the fiat deposits, we allow them to also be exchanging tokens, well, USAT for that other token, give them the opportunity to go global. But we are missing something. What Jess says, like, how can we make that, how can we have more people using? Today, if there is anyone for any blockchain here, including Ethereum or any other blockchain, there is no blockchain in the market that could replace Visa or MasterCard. Some people say, no, Ethereum can do it. No, cannot do it. There is no way to do the thousands of transactions per second. None of the blockchains that out there is able to do. And then the other problem is, oh, how about if I pay a coffee, 50 cents for that coffee in Venezuela? Well, in Venezuela, 50 cents of dollar, we're going to pay the coffee, the bread, and then the juice and the water, a lot of things. So $50, why am I paying 5 cents for gas fee? It's a 10% of the transaction. None of the blockchains in the market is ready to do that. And then we see Tron, $2 per transaction. Ethereum, around $1.50. And by the way, Tron was, the way Tron did was because Ethereum was too expensive. Now Tron, it's more expensive than Ethereum. And then you see Liquid, and you see the other one. And Solana to use, you need to pay 50 cents to activate the address. I don't know where those guys came from, but I mean, honestly, that's not going to be the way to make that a mainstream. What I'm saying is like, for us to make that happen, one, we need a proper blockchain. Maybe Liquid could be a possibility because they have privacy, because privacy is the other thing. Today I'm seeing banking saying, oh, I'm putting USDT here, or the other one that I'm not even say their name because like 5% of the market tell them to do the homework. So those guys are putting those stable coins in the bank. And now if I transfer to my account, to my address, whoever is doing that will know my balance and you know my transactions. Now imagine someone saying, I just told Bo, imagine going to Mexico with 5,000 USAT in my wallet. Well, that's not much, but 5,000 is a lot of money. Then I go to Mexico to a shop and then I can pay with USAT. $2, and I pay with that USAT. Am I a customer? No, I'm a target. Because they can see my balance, they can see my transactions, because it's using Ethereum. So if we do not fix the privacy problem, that thing cannot go to mainstream, because we're going to put at risk the user. And we need to solve that. When you solve that problem, 100%, we're going to be seeing killing the banks. So in the end, remember my T-shirt? We're going to work.
Rocelo, I remember we did a podcast previously, and you talk about the dangers of exposing your wallet address to other people. He's got a really good story about that on that podcast. We won't go into that now, but something that happened to him individually on a Bitcoin transaction, I think it's worth checking out. Miguel, how are people using Tether in El Salvador at the moment?
Okay. Well, basically, we have to understand that El Salvador is a very special country within the Latin America, because we have the dollar, the US dollar, we have on and off ramps with BTC, and we also use USDT. So basically what we are doing here in El Salvador is to use USDT for payments, peer-to-peer payments, payment to merchants, and also remittances, which is basically one of the key points of our GDP. But besides El Salvador, in Latin America, they are using it like a safe place to use for inflation for their own fiat currencies. So here in El Salvador, what we are trying to do is to have more use cases and to spread the users here in El Salvador. How can we do that? Basically, in study cases and spread the word. Because basically, Salvadorians still have to have more awareness about using the USDT. Because it makes your life easier. It's less middlemen, lower cost, etc. It's like using AI, It's like, I'm going to do an investigation and I'm going to do it by myself. Okay, but you have AI tools that can help you in the way. They might not solve their problem, but they can easily make it easier. So it's the same thing for USDT or stablecoins here in El Salvador, because there's another channel to make payments, to send money, to peer-to-peer payments, etc. So that's basically the cases that we have here in El Salvador.
So this panel was supposed to be about inclusion and tokenized assets, and somehow Tether has taken over the discussion. So it feels like Bitfinex is constantly living a little bit in the shadow of Tether, which is the story of my life. But in Paraguay, how is the regulator approaching tokenized assets like tokenized securities and real-world assets?
Well, right now, they're allowing us, for the first time in history, but they're allowing a digital assets hedge fund to be created under the law of pretty much the SEC, the Securities Act of Paraguay. So this is not directly going into tokenization, but it's preparing the market for digital assets, which is positive. This took us 14 months. Apart from that, after that experience, what we saw is a lot of openness from the government to start seeing a lot of different RWA possibilities, specifically in real estate, agriculture, and commodities. So we have a lot of, let's say, gas fees, real gas fees in terms of tokenized or actually transfer of goods or transfer of value to like end farmers or end producers. In the agricultural sector, Paraguay is one of the largest production houses of commodities in the world. What's the issue? That the producer does not get the fair price of the value of grain. So right now, there's a lot of associations that what they're building is, hey, let's build a support system for the producer. Soy, I mean, we're not talking about Monsanto or not Monsanto. This is another kind of conversation. And I think it would be, this platform, let's say, this liquidation platform, this security or support system for the producer is pretty much a venture capital firm. And what they do is they raise capital to lend money to producers, and the producers, instead of writing an RWA or actually a structured document with the stock exchange, which costs a lot of money, we're trying to see if we could build a commodities exchange through the blockchain directly, in where those assets are real, custodied, and verifiable. And that has been a big problem for Paraguay, because a lot of companies went bankrupt because the fiscalization process of grains never existed. So warrants weren't really warrants. So that's one thing. The second thing that we're starting with, and I think the country's like promoting, is pretty much venture capital in general. So VC, venture debt for SMEs. And I say SMEs all the time because they're 85% of our economy. Well, it's pretty much in every country. So lending and collateralized lending is a big thing right now. The hurdle right now that we're going through is with the digitalization of assets. So we have a law right now which is called, the law digitalized, la ley It's a law that establishes a digital procedure. It's very long, but specifically it gives a support system for validating the existence of property, the existence of structured goods, and it validates who are the parties. So it will be a lot easier to, when you're talking about our real estate investment trust, for example, to take the deed from the Catastro Nacional, which is the entity that deposits all, well, where the deposit of all the deeds in Paraguay are, to validate its existence, to confirm the provenance of funds of the purchase, and it gives something a lot more wholesome to be able to provide international investors with a product that has confirmable data. Okay, so this is something that's going on. There's a new, the new inclusion of the possibility of emissions of digital assets through the Securities Act of Asunción is done. And right now we're waiting and we're working with the government to do pretty much the decreto reglamentario, which is pretty much, it's the formal legislation that validates the processes that they have to go through to be able to do the emission. So things are going on.
So are people doing issuances now in Paraguay under this framework?
No, it's new. It's 3 months old. What we're doing now with El Salvador is we're kind of doing a little piggyback of the regulations here. And there's 5 companies that are currently looking to do real estate investment trust, tokenization of grain. And I think it's you know, it's a good way also, and the government has said this, it's, hey, make all your mistakes somewhere where you can go to jail, because here, you know, try to do things well. I mean, it's not really the right thing to say, but you know, that's what we're doing right now. So we're bringing companies here to try to see if their ideas work. But the same issue arises in every single tokenization issue, is the following thing, the funding. So there has to be a lot more I say venture capital, private equity, a lot more hedge funds, a lot more financial entities that take risks on RWAs. Right now, it's a good time for them to narrow in on these assets specifically for, I don't know, raw materials and commodities, which you know they're going to increase in value in the medium term. So I think that it's a good leadway into going and doing this, but they're also going into the FINMA regulation in Switzerland. They're also going through MiCA for investment funds. The issue is the cost. And in Latin America, we always talk about the cost. The tokenization and the process of tokenization has to be cheaper than the normal ways of doing business. Why? It's because in the normal ways of doing business, Paraguay has a credit rating that's already, you know, and it's already an appetizing investment for the entire world. It's much easier to do an investment product or a risk-weighted asset outside of the country, or even I don't know, an F20 in the New York Stock Exchange is going to cost $500 to $2 million, but you know you're going to get your funding. You know, in tokenization, it's not getting there. You know, and we need to figure out how to do it. And the easiest way to do it is to do small products, $1-2 million to start with, you know, and do something that's reasonable and has, you know, people can bite their teeth into, you know. So that's what we're trying to do: properties, commodities, and pretty much, you know, real-world assets in general.
So that kind of ties in with the previous conversation in that the regulators in Paraguay sound like they're actually using El Salvador as a proof of concept. Yeah. So they want to see this work, and then they're looking at replicating it in Paraguay as well.
Yeah, that's pretty much that. I mean, I work a lot with the government in Paraguay, and everybody knows about it. And we're collaborating with 2 entities. One is the WIF, which is which is FinCEN of Paraguay, which is the let's say the entity that supervises money laundering and everything else, you know, all the good stuff that we're not supposed to do. Yeah. So, and the other entity is the superintendency of the stock market, which is pretty much the SEC of Paraguay. Yeah. So what they want to know is, hey, how do we do this? But at the same time, how do we protect protect the country's assets? But at some point, there's a scam, or at some point, we have to seize assets. We want to learn how to do it, and we don't have the legal framework to do it in Paraguay. So, hey, government of El Salvador, can you help us out to see what to do? And we have 2 use cases right now, one with an entity that I will not discuss here because, you know, it's a competition of Bitfinex, but they've had issues, you know? And the district attorney wants to seize not USDT, Bitcoin that's actually there, and they can't do it because there's no legal framework. So they're learning through the district attorney's office in El Salvador how to do it. So it's okay. I mean, it's moving, and from last year to this year, things are a lot more clear, and business is booming.
Well, that's great that we can help them learn how to confiscate Bitcoin. Rocelo, what about Brazil? I understand there's a lot happening in tokenized assets in Brazil. We haven't been that deep into it, but can you give us a kind of a high-level view of what's happening in Brazil?
What happened over there is like they don't know who should be responsible for. We have our CVM, which is our the department that is responsible for assets and stock options and all that. And then we have the central bank that's supposed to be responsible for crypto, right? But they don't know who is who. They don't understand. Sometimes they do a regulation and then they have to change it. What's happening is, good thing, it's some people, they come to El Salvador, they tokenize it here. Let's say, for example, most of people don't know, but like, for example, Paraguay is one of the largest soya exporters in the world. And I'm seeing Brazilians with a soya farm tokenizing the soya farm that is in Paraguay in El Salvador. Yeah. Easier, cheaper, faster. Yeah. So now look at that. A Brazilian farmer that is farming in Paraguay because it's easier to import equipment. It's way easier than Brazil. On the tax side, way simple, way better and faster, but he cannot get investment. Now, he's fighting for investors. What they do, they tokenize it here. Some they use Hadron, some they just do it over here. Now they are selling their token against USDT in other countries. So someone from Australia, someone from England will be able to invest just to send USDT to that particular one and then buy that, and then the producer actually is a Brazilian in Paraguay. But why the Brazilians they are doing that? Because the regulator in Brazil does not know what to do. So they rather to come to countries like that. And to be honest with you, I think the way it's going to be is like, when it's too complicated in a country, let's go to another country, and that allowed us to do just because one thing, we have blockchain in our favor. The only thing, again, I hate to put it that way, the privacy, I'm always concerned about it. Because when we see tokens floating from one wallet to another wallet, and everybody can see, I'll give you an example to every one of you guys. Let's say Tesla, they tokenize Tesla now. Now Elon Musk decides to transfer token from his wallet to Bitfinex platform because he want to put a sell order. Everybody goes panic because everybody knows that wallet belongs to Elon Musk, or someone knows that because we can analyze the wallets on the internet. We can use to see who is who. Now I'm concerned about someone that has a huge position and in one token transfer to the platform or transfer from one platform to another platform. Everybody's monitoring those transactions. That is my concern because that could affect also in the price of the token. Even if not selling, but just the movement to do. Just let's face it, if Elon Musk say, I don't like Tesla, the next day the price is going to drop. Now imagine transferring. We need to solve that issue. Really, we need to solve that problem. But the blockchain allowed a simple farmer to tokenize it, his production. Doesn't matter what he's doing. And that can be someone in other parts of the world that also can do that. Like yesterday, I was in London, in UK, in our office over there. I was talking with some officials there about we need like a good stable coin also in England. We need to make sure it is possible to a British person be able to transact, or someone wants to do business with England, be able to say, you know what, get our stable coin and then we can buy from your product. We need more of that. And sometimes not even say, investor from England will be able to invest in a very small company in Brazil because maybe he likes the company or maybe he needs that deal for that company. So, but in the end of the day, if the regulator do not understand exactly what the market needs, we're not going to go anywhere. In Brazil, right now, we're in that stage. They don't know what they are doing. That is the truth.
So they're still looking for proof of concepts as well to kind of develop what they want to do.
And then I think what they're doing, they are copying what, well, let's see what El Salvador is doing, or let's see what the other country is doing. Let's try to do the same.
But I think that's what everybody's doing too. I mean, that's what the US has done with Tether. So I think in a lot of ways, the rest of the world is kind of like a sandbox for the US, that when things get big enough, then the US adopts them. And that's what happened with Tether. And I think that's probably what will happen with tokenized securities too.
No, I hope but I hope they copy for a very good place. I hope they do not copy, let's say, all right, let's copy that one, but let's add tax on it. Because that's what Brazil, they do now. Everything in Brazil is about tax. How much money can we make? Just for you guys to have an idea, any company from Brazil want to wire money to pay anything overseas is starting 3.5% tax, just right there. So, and then comes the other tax. So that's the point. Every time in Brazil, Brazil is a country that they are crazy about collecting tax. I think some countries in the world, they're like that too. But over there is difficult. But I hope they copy some sandbox that give a little bit more freedom to the small producer. Give a little bit more freedom to people who actually need investment. And that's why I'm always, when I talk with the regulators in Brazil, I'm going to say, why don't you do a sandbox based on the amount of money that the producer needs, that the company is doing, that they need? Go based on the amount. Just do not try to kill the small guy, because right now they are killing the small guy.
That's great. I think we need to wrap it up here, though, for the interest of time, and keep things moving on. I really appreciate everyone participating in today's panels and giving us perspectives from different parts of the region and also thoughts from the UK as well. So I think that's been a really useful panel. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Jesse.